Hello, hello, Ultimate Wellness community. Today I'm speaking with Nathalie Niddam, holistic nutritionist, longevity educator. Nathalie is dedicated to helping us all live joyful and vibrant life well into our 50s, 60s, and beyond. She shares strategies from health tech to ancestral health, to peptides, to bioregulators, and more on her podcast, Longevity Podcast with Nathalie Niddam. And we are honored to announce Nathalie Niddam as one of our keynote speakers at the Ultimate Wellness Conference at Faena Forum in Miami Beach. On September 26, 27, 28, it's going to be a 3-day longevity conference, and please join us to learn science-based strategies for longevity, health optimization, and of course, explore the latest innovations in biohacking, as well as engage in immersive experiences and practical workshops, spiritual activities, and breathwork, sound healing, all about holistic health. So, Nathalie, thank you for supporting our conference. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Julia, for having me. The conference sounds fantastic. I can't wait to go personally. I think it's going to be amazing. And I've heard such amazing things about the conference and also the venue. And so I'm really looking forward to being there this year. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and let's remind that you have your special promo code NET, really easy to memorize. It's just NAT, and our guest can go to ultimatewellness.miami/forum and purchase their tickets. Nathalie provides her keynote speech on Sunday, and we even have special ticket for Sunday because Sunday is promising to be fantastic. We have top speakers such as Dr. Amy Bickill, and she's going to speak about sexual optimization. We also will have Cynthia Thurlow, Women Health, Biohacking for Females, Nathalie Niddam, and Sound Healing with the Orchestra is also his final experience on Sunday. So if for any reason you're going to miss Friday and Saturday, which I hope you are not going to miss, but if you are going to miss, you definitely can join us on Sunday, and we have a special pass for 1 day for Sunday. So you can see all options, all tickets on our website. Now, Nathalie, you share a lot of knowledge on longevity at your podcast, and you have usually very interesting speakers, and obviously you have some insights from your own experience for longevity. How you bridge this gap between these innovations and bioregulators and ancestral practices, and maybe we can start from your vision and explanation on holistic health, because as you can see here at Ultimate Wellness, we emphasize obviously this holistic approach to our health, spirit, emotional, mind-body connection. And even though we love biohacking technologies and all these bioregulators, and I personally use them as well, but it's interesting to start from your vision, what is holistic health, and what else do you incorporate?
And that's actually a really good question, Julia. I think that we have to start, and I think people have heard me say this before, we really have to start from the bottom up, right? We have to start from our foundations. And in the biohacking space, sometimes people, I feel, get it a little bit backwards. They get so excited and enamored with the technology, with the supplements, with all the fancy stuff that sometimes we forget about the basic foundation. And the basic foundation is, it's not necessarily sexy, right? The basic foundations is, are you getting enough good quality sleep? Are you focusing on your sleep? Are you eating a whole food diet? And I don't really care what, I mean, I do care, but I don't think it matters as much sometimes which path you choose. What matters the most is that you're eating a whole food diet. So starting with foods that are in their as much in their natural state as possible, which isn't to say I'm saying people need to be raw, eating their meat and their vegetables raw, but eating food that is recognizable. And, in the world right now, you have so many big companies that are trying to cash in on all of these different movements, whether it's, it was paleo or non-GMO or organic or vegan or carnivore, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is. And we're getting more and more processed foods that are kind of trying to fit themselves into these different lifestyles. And in the end, they're still processed foods. So
Mm-hmm.
we have to remember that the foundation of our diet needs to come from whole foods. And that means, you might have to cook. You might have to,
Mm-hmm.
take the time to prepare food for yourself and yourself and or your loved ones. Basically, eating a whole food diet, I think is unavoidable if we want to really age well. The truth is that foods are not as nutritious, they're not as nutrient dense as
Mm-hmm.
they once were, right? We know that the
Mm-hmm.
soils are depleted. We know that there's a lot of chemicals and toxins and all these things. And that is true. And that is where I think supplementation comes in and the fancy stuff. But nothing takes away from the fact that the first thing is eating those natural foods. So we're sleeping, we're eating a whole food diet, and we're also we're moving, right? So we're moving our bodies, which means that not only are we exercising so that we can stay strong, but we're also not trying everything we can do not to sit in a chair for 4, 5, 6,
Mm-hmm.
7, 8 hours in
Mm-hmm.
a row. So moving the body and exercising are two very different things. And sometimes people think, if I go to the gym and kill myself for an hour in the morning, I'm good. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, you're good. And it doesn't make up for not moving through the day.
Exactly, exactly.
Right.
And that's also because our lymphatic system needs always pump and
Yeah.
to move fluid, lymph fluid.
So the sleeping movement, the exercise, the whole food diet. Also, the other piece that you mentioned, which is that whole spiritual and
Mm-hmm.
peace, right? The whole learning to manage the stress, because we're all under a lot of stress, learning to manage stress, having community around you of people that support you, that you support and support you. We can't take all of those pieces need to be in place because that community is a big part of how we're going to manage stress. Learning to, whether it's breath work or meditation, getting out in nature, all of these things are the foundation from which we move from.
It's good that you mentioned the stress management because we know that all imbalances in our body, they are caused by stress, this elevated cortisol.
Many. Yeah.
Yeah. And I consider spiritual stress is the biggest stress.
Yeah.
That fear, anxiety, like mental stress, yes, they are all big stressors, but also the spiritual stress, when we are disconnected and not connected to our higher self. So I think it's a huge stress on our body. And thank you for mentioning this. Now about supplements. As you're a
About
holistic nutritionist, you understand that our food doesn't provide all necessarily vitamins, microelements, and you obviously, I think so. I follow you. I know that you suggest supplements to add these necessarily trace elements, vitamins, and what is your top supplements?
Yeah, and it's a tough question to answer because I
Mm-hmm.
think
But
even foundation supplements might vary from person to person, right? But definitely we know that there's a tendency for people to be deficient in vitamin D3.
mm-hmm.
And even people like you who live in beautiful sunny climates, you're trying to keep your skin young, so you're trying to stay out of the sun, right? And so it's a very tricky balance to achieve. I live in a northern climate, so my body is deprived of its ability to make vitamin D most of the time. Now, I'm lucky enough, I own a light upstairs called
Mm-hmm.
I think Goody. It's called the Mitolux,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
Mitolux actually delivers
Mm-hmm.
UVB that initiates my body's ability to make its own vitamin D3. So that I think down the road, as more people have access to that type of technology, might not need to supplement with vitamin D3 as much. But
Mm-hmm.
get your vitamin D3 tested. And if you're low in D3 and you don't have a light, and even though there's people that question the validity of taking vitamin D3, I think you're better off taking it. Ideally, you're also taking it with vitamin K because
Two.
D3 and K
K2.
together
Mm-hmm.
are very important for bones.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I think that all four of the fat soluble vitamins, D, K, A, and E, should be taken together. because they occur naturally in nature together. And so there's a company called
Quicksilver Scientific.
well, there's Quicksilver, there's Healthgevity, there's a couple of different companies.
Tell me more, because I know D3K2 I usually buy from Quicksilver Scientific, and it's good supplement,
They're
liposomal
fantastic.
formula.
I think Quicksilver
Yeah.
is one of the top
No,
supplement companies out
specifically
there.
with this D3K2, they have very good formula. But if you can suggest, please suggest. What else do you suggest?
Yeah, the other one that I like, so I mean,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the person, I also like Healthgevity because
Mm-hmm.
they have the D3K2, they have the MK677, like they have the highest form of K, plus they have vitamin A and vitamin E. And all of
Mm-hmm.
these vitamins balance each other's out. It's why we find them together very often. Like for people who really need vitamin A, if you've done a test and you need vitamin A, you can use liver. But if you're using liver, guess what? You're getting a whole complex. It's like eating liver is like a multivitamin, right?
So you
Because nature
suggest
puts
eating liver as a multivitamin
it is.
source.
I mean, and so what you can do there is a lot of people, first of all, most people won't eat liver every single day.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily good for you every single day. You have to make sure that your iron isn't too high. But
Mm-hmm.
if you want to supplement with liver, and you're not a big fan of it, you can buy these desiccated liver supplements. So companies like Heart and Soil, Ancestral Supplements, these guys are sourcing liver from grass-fed animals. They dry it out, they powder it, and they stuff it in a capsule. It becomes a lot easier to take. But I think that what's important when we're talking about what supplements everybody should be taking,
Mm-hmm.
it is important at least once a year to get tested for micronutrients, to look for vitamin imbalances, right? Because if someone is deficient in vitamin B12, that's going to be one of their foundational supplements.
Yeah, I like True Diagnostic, True Health. You probably know this test. They show you epigenetic expression and how do you process macronutrients and micronutrients. They also
Yeah, the
suggest what
thing,
you should prioritize, protein, fat, or
right.
carbs.
That's true. The thing with that test is it doesn't actually tell you what is happening in your body. So if you really want to, like, it's going to tell you your genetic tendencies, which is really good insight to have.
It's
But if you,
epigenetic testing. So they have genetic test. They have through age. It's
yeah, I've seen that.
biological
I use
age,
it all the time.
and
Yeah.
yes, and they also have True Health, and there you can see also some deficiencies of microelements.
Okay, so I haven't seen the True Health test. The one that
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know that test for this stuff is SpectraCell, sorry.
Mm.
SpectraCell tests for
And
micronutrients
probably
as well.
upgraded formula also has test. They take your hair, like, yeah. Do you know? Test
I would
upgraded
personally,
labs.
for myself, I would prefer to take blood for this
Uh-huh.
purpose.
Okay,
For
so
this for this
you
particular
suggest blood
application,
test.
I'd be more of a fan of blood. But in any event, so going back to those foundational supplements, another thing that I never skip that I think is very important is I use a supplement called B Minerals that gives me
All minerals.
trace minerals, and it also gives us electrolytes. And it does it in a form that is a natural form, which is fulvic and humic acid. And so this is kind of like a whole food way to deliver to the body these micronutrients that are very hard to get in the right ratios, but that occur naturally in these compounds. So this is one of these, again, it's a foundational supplement. Anybody can take it, even little kids. It's really easy. It's kind of like drinking water.
We use purium ionic elements. It's also sourced from nature, and it includes over 40 trace elements in the drops. So yeah, Purium is also a very good company, but Beam Minerals obviously is also really great. How about fatty fish, omega-3? What do you suggest in terms of omega-3? I think like few good companies offer good quality omega-3, which is processed cold pressure with cold pressure, because heating is not good, and then it's just too high totox level, right? the totox level? And what do you suggest in terms of omega-3?
I think for omega-3, very important to have a good quality supplement. You'll know it's not good quality if you start burping up fishy burps. Now, it also could be a sign that your digestion's not optimized, but for the most part, you shouldn't have fishy burps. So again, Quicksilver has great options here. I know that I've been working with a company lately called Puori, Puori, that have very, very good quality fish oil, protein powder. They have some really great quality supplements. Bottom line, you're going to want to go to the more professional brands. So like Quicksilver is one of them. We have also Designs for Health has some really good options here. The other thing that I think that is really great for people, and especially people like you who live in sunny climates, but really anyone, is astaxanthin. And astaxanthin it's what gives salmon its red color. And it's a very, very powerful antioxidant. It's really good for skin. People will even refer to it almost like taking sunscreen from the inside out. And what's interesting about astaxanthin is they've done studies and shown that when you take astaxanthin orally, it actually goes to the skin. So there's so many other, like I think molecular hydrogen, again, because why molecular hydrogen and not another nutrient? Because molecular hydrogen helps the body to balance oxidative stress. So it's not going to stifle all oxidative stress because you need some ROS as signaling molecules. But molecular hydrogen helps the body to manage inflammation properly. So
yeah, it's perfect. The managing inflammation is really important. It's inflammaging. Well, and I guess bioregulators also do a great job in terms of managing inflammation, and bioregulator peptides are a cornerstone of your longevity approach. And you are obviously great expert on peptides, bioregulators. So let's talk about peptides and what is difference between peptides and bioregulators. I guess there is some difference between these two groups.
Well, there's the most basic difference is that bioregulators act on DNA. So they are epigenetic switches, right? So bioregulators are very, very small. There are maybe 2 to 4 amino acids, maybe 5. There's some new information coming out that there may be some other bioregulators that are a little bit bigger than the 4 that was originally designated. But the way that peptides that are not bioregulators typically work is they are typically signaling molecules. So they don't get into the nucleus of the cell and they don't act directly on DNA. It doesn't mean that they can't affect gene expression, because they can, but they do it in a signaling way.
And how bioregulators, peptides interact with our DNA and cellular system for promoting rejuvenation?
The bioregulator actually gets into the nucleus and it actually binds to the DNA. So it actually it actually binds to a site on the DNA, which upregulates the production of specific proteins. And that's ultimately how the bioregulator is going to help to rejuvenate at a cellular level. And it does it. The other interesting thing about the bioregulator is it's like an adaptogen. So it doesn't overstimulate and it doesn't suppress. It really looks to restore homeostasis in the body.
How it is synthesized? Is it where they derive this bioregulator?
So it's a good question. There's 2 sources of bioregulators. You have either the synthetic, which is synthesized in a lab.
So let's explain. Synthesized, but it's still at the end product, it's a protein. It's natural protein, right? Even if it's synthesized in a lab.
Yeah. It's still it's the same. It's the same amino acid sequence.
Just once people hear that it is synthesized in lab, they think that the end product is also some synthetic product, but it's not synthetic product. It's synthesized in lab, but it's still protein at the end of this synthesis.
But it's not as extracted. So you have 2 branches of bioregulators. Okay, you have the natural bioregulator, which is extracted from natural tissue. So nobody's synthesizing anything. What they're doing is they're finding, let's say they take a thymus gland from a young calf, or they might take it from a pig, and they're going to extract from that thymus gland, and purify and come out with a product that has the bioregulator amino acid sequence, plus it'll have some other amino acids and other compounds in there to support. That's the natural bioregulator. The synthetic bioregulator is where the scientists have identified, okay, in the thymus bioregulator, we see this exact sequence of amino acids arranged in this exact configuration. And they will then, in a lab, take those amino acids and do the biochemistry magic that biochemists do, and they will recreate that exact molecule that was present in the thymus gland extract. What's going to be absent from the synthetic bioregulator that's produced in the lab is the other amino acids and the other compounds that come from in the natural one are not going to be there in the synthetic.
Which one do you prefer?
I think they're different. I think that I really do. I think for people who have a lot of autoimmune issues and people who are very, very sensitive, sometimes starting with a synthetic, because you can start at a very low dose, might be a better approach. It might be easier for them. But the natural bioregulator, if you read the literature and what we're seeing out in the world is that sometimes it takes a little longer to see the effect of the natural bioregulator, but it seems to last longer. And probably it's because of that whole entourage of other compounds that come with the amino acid sequence.
Interesting. What specific peptides do you find most effective for promoting longevity and vibrant health span? Names,
So you're
please.
talking about peptides
Give me
now.
yeah.
Yeah, I think for the bioregulators, definitely if you want to look at the top geroprotectors, which is what Professor Cavinson would talk about, he talked about the pineal gland bioregulator. Apidolon is the synthetic name. Endolutin is the natural pineal gland bioregulator name. He talks about the thymolin, the thymus gland bioregulator. He also talks about Vilon, Vilon, which is actually only available as a synthetic. Really interesting. So I think it's what it is. It's because it's a component of the thymus gland bioregulator. And I would say that the bioregulators to me are the most powerful for Healthspan, because in there you have a blood vessel bioregulator, you have a bioregulator for the heart, for the lungs, for the kidneys. So imagine as we age that our organs, they sustain damage. We have DNA damage just from the environment that we live in and from life. And if these bioregulator peptides help to restore the DNA's ability to do what it does, right, or to repair the DNA, this is going to be the most powerful technique that we need to have on board, along with all the other things that we do. Alone, they're not enough, but I think to me, they're a cornerstone. On the peptide side, I think of peptides more as, I think with peptides, it depends what you have going on. Right. So BPC 157, for example, which is if you have any kind of gut issues, if you have musculoskeletal issues going on, BPC 157 can be a very powerful repair agent.
Yeah, because they target many organs simultaneously. So it's not only targeting some one organ. And if you take BPC 157 orally, you also heal inflammation in your gut. So it's one of peptides which I personally use from time to time.
And I think that's what's important. From time to time, we cycle in and out. If we're talking pure longevity, then something like a GHK copper, I think is a very interesting peptide. There's a lot of people, I will say that sometimes I think of GHK copper. I think that if Professor Cavinson had discovered it himself, it would probably be one of the bioregulators because it acts directly on DNA. And it restores genes back to their more youthful settings. So it is a very important healthy aging peptide, not to use the word anti-aging, right? So I think GHK copper is going, and there's a lot of research going on around it. So I think we're going to keep seeing more and more information coming out.
And it's only in injections.
No, it can be used topically.
Topically,
right?
okay.
But
Mhm.
topically, it's not, it's going to affect the skin, which it's very
Yeah,
powerful
right.
for skin, but you're not going to get the systemic benefits. You can take it. There are now an increasing number of companies that are doing GHK copper liposomal oral. So one
Mhm.
of them is, we just talked about them, Quicksilver Scientific has an
Mhm.
oral GHKCU. Also, Level Up Health, fabulous
Mhm.
GHKCU liposome. So you can take it as a capsule. And in the literature on GHK copper, they actually do talk about how, because when they did their studies on mice, for example, they infused the mice, like they injected them into the peritoneum, like they were injecting the mice all day long. They talk about liposomal delivery of GHK copper possibly being able to produce the same results. So I think that liposomal GHK is really, really interesting to look at as a healthy aging strategy.
What
Yeah.
about peptides for reducing inflammation? Once we already mentioned that inflammation, it's
So
a
so
hallmark of
BPC's
aging.
yeah, so BPC is anti-inflammatory.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you have, and I think that the thymus bioregulator is going to help with inflammation just because it's helping modulate the immune system. If you have something going on with the immune system, then you might use if you have something going on, if your innate immune system is suppressed, so the Th1 system, you're getting sick a lot, you might use something like thymosin alpha 1. But just to be clear, number one, I'm not a doctor. And number two, a lot of these compounds are actually, especially on the peptide side, are considered to be research chemicals. So it is
Yeah,
important
yeah.
to tell your audience that, these are not approved in the US, like thymosin alpha 1 I think
Mm-hmm.
is still on the no-fly list. BPC 157 is okay to take orally. They're not big
Mm-hmm.
fans of people using it
Mm-hmm.
subcutaneously. So you just have to be cautious, right? But another peptide that I think is interesting, and it needs a lot more research, even dosing is all over the map, but there's a peptide called FOXO4, and that is a peptide that can help to really reduce senescent cell load.
Mm-hmm. For
So,
longevity,
but you
perfect.
have to be
Mm-hmm.
very careful with it because it's very, very strong. I would say I prefer to use something like a Qualia senolytic formula that I use 2 days a month. I think it's much safer. It really does a good job to 6 capsules day one, 6 capsules day two, and you're done. With FOXO4, it's kind of all over the map. Nobody's really sure about the dosing. So unless you're under the guidance of a physician who's going to help you with that, I would say that going the route of something like a qualia, which has things like fisetin in it, it's got a whole bunch of different herbal components that we know reduce senescent cells. And as you know, senescent cells is a huge
Mm-hmm.
part of driving early aging and inflammation.
Yeah, those zombie cells which we want to remove, and yeah, this is great for longevity. Well,
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit about your podcast. And at your podcast, Longevity Podcast with Nathalie Niddam, you obviously have wonderful guests. Tell me highlights. What have you learned from your guests and implemented in your health routine, or you suggest to your clients? Because actually, I know you see clients as well, right? The
Not so
person,
much.
not so much, just.
No, I don't see
Mhm,
one-on-one clients anymore. Where
mhm,
where I interact the most with people is I have a membership community that people
mhm,
can join, and I do,
mhm.
like tonight I'm doing a live office
Q&A
hours,
sessions.
like kind of a
Mhm,
Q&A session, and
mhm.
and I get, podcast guests to come into the community and do that as well. So that's more the zone of where I'm not doing a lot of one-on-one work right now. Um
Yeah,
but
so you have many professionals from health and wellness industry on your podcast. What are the
yeah,
most surprising stories? What are
yeah,
the best like cases or something that you learned from them and implemented in your daily
for
routine,
sure.
probably?
Well, you know what? I think there's always something new, right? There's always
Yeah.
going to be stuff that blow. That's
Yeah.
that's the whole point of being in this business. Now, I will say that in the last 6 months, the
Mhm.
two guests that have really kind of that have provided information that I think everybody needs to hear, that's really important, is there's a woman by the name of Dr. Jennifer Simmons, and she's bringing to light new technology for women to use to detect breast cancer that
Mm.
is non-invasive and that doesn't increase your chances of getting breast cancer.
I truly believe that we already switched from disease care to prevention medicine, let's say. So I like that you emphasize this technology, and it's really important to have all tools for prevention, early stage diagnosis, and so yeah,
Yeah.
such technologies.
Yeah, so she talks about the QT scan, which is a scan that doesn't involve, the smashing together of tissue. It doesn't involve radiation, and it does a much better job, as it turns out, than a mammogram without using radiation. And then there's another test called the Aurea test, which is a tear test, because it turns out that women who have breast cancer will secrete two distinct proteins in their tears. So, when you hear, nobody's talking about this. And when you hear this, it makes you stop and think, wow, like this information has to get out. So that was one podcast that I found really fascinating. The other area that I think is really interesting and doesn't get enough airplay, but I think it's going to start as well, is around bone health. And so talking about how the ways that we have to measure bones right now, like the DEXA scan, the challenge with those is that they look at bone density, but they don't give you an idea of the bone quality. And so there's now a company that is going around, they are opening clinics using a REMS machine called the Ecolite. And what the Ecolite does is it not only looks at bone density, but it also looks at bone quality. And you actually have a couple of clinics, I think, in Florida that already have this technology on board. And I think it's fascinating because you can look at two people and this person can have better bone density on a DEXA, but their bone quality, which the DEXA won't give you any information about, is actually very bad. Whereas this
Yeah.
person might not have as good bone density on DEXA, but their bone quality is much better, which means their bone is a bit more flexible. So they're less likely to fracture.
It's so fascinating how these advancements bring us new tools to measure something. Just recently, I talked to gut ID test, gut ID. And what they do, they kind of show you all map, not only some list of beneficial bacteria, some strains, but they come up with gut health score. They analyze all possible prediction of all possible healthy and not healthy bacteria, fungi, yeast, and they give you this gut health score, which is very different from GI map, which we used for a long time. And I
Yeah.
believe you know this test, and all FDNs, they use GI map. Which is actually people cannot order without medical supervision. And now
Yeah.
this gut ID test, everyone can order, and I just ordered for myself, and I'm waiting for my results. So each time, companies just offer us new technologies to test, and now I understand that GI map, which I suggested for a long time to my clients, I used myself. Now I would probably rather suggest this gut ID test. And now you just said, okay, we have new tools to measure bone quality, not only density. And each time, how we can just be in time and how we can follow all these innovations. It sounds so complicated, sometimes overwhelming to know what to measure, how to measure, what is the right test, because every time we get new tests. Like,
Oh, yeah. No, listen, we've got tests to measure mitochondrial function now. We have the theriome test, which looks at 12 different metabolomes in the body. We have some very sophisticated testing, and a lot of it is direct to consumer. And so it's going to be about understanding, and I think a big piece of this is understanding what stage of life are you at? And so what are the things you need to be looking at? So at different ages, I mean, I think bone density, people should start looking in their 30s. Don't
yes,
wait, right?
exactly.
Because you want
I
to
agree
see,
with you. Yeah, I
yeah,
agree
the
with
gut
you.
ID. You, if you're listening to this and you're 22 years old, get your gut ID done. Like these are tests that you need to be doing all the way along. Hormone testing.
Microbiome test, it's number one at least once per year, just to know what is going on with your microbiome, because microbiome influences everything. And we have kind of 23,000 our own genes, but in microbiome we have millions, billions of genes. And I'm just saying that sometimes it can be also even stressful for people, because we are in this industry. We speak with new companies every day, and every week we kind of receive this news. But those people who don't know as much about all tests, all supplements.
Well, I think that that's where working with a coach comes into play, right?
Exactly.
Someone who can help you to understand what your priorities should be based on your age, your stage, how you're feeling, all of those different things are going to influence what's going to be the most important test for you right now. Because to your point, there's so many different tests, there's so many different supplements, there's so many different biohacking tools. The questions we have to ask is, where am I today? What's my state of health? What are my goals? And so what's the next thing I need to do? And I think that's where working with a coach really is helpful, because even coaches need coaches. It's hard when you're in the forest to see. So it's a good idea to get an outside point of view to help you move the needle for yourself.
Exactly. I just want to talk about, for a moment, women health, and announce that on Sunday, when you are giving your keynote speech, we also will have panel discussion on women health with brilliant speakers. And by the way, regarding bone health, we also will have Dr. Wanda. Dr. Wanda, she is a surgeon, orthopedic surgeon, and she's going to join us and give her keynote speech. So we are going to have many brilliant speakers, including Nathalie Niddam herself, and I am proud that so many great speakers joining us at the Ultimate Wellness Conference at Faena Forum on September 26, 27, 28. It's going to be an amazing weekend where you can learn the best strategies for longevity and health optimization. So make sure to join us and purchase your ticket with promo code NET, N-A-T, at the ultimatewellness.miami/forum. Thank you, Nathalie. Thank you for this interesting conversation. I have learned some new technologies and also will make some notes for myself regarding supplements. I actually going to purchase restock something from from what you suggested, because each time for me it's also a reminder that I should practice what I preach.
For sure.
Yes,
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Julia. This has been a pleasure. And I'm really looking forward to the September. Thank you so much.
Thank you.